Hi, this is Mrs. Bustamante. Now we're going to do our second example of a monohybrid cross and predicting the outcomes. In pea plants, tall is dominant to short. So in this example, I'm going to use a capital T to represent tall, and I'm going to use a lowercase t to represent short. Sometimes this is where students will question, do I have to use the same letter? Yes, it's good to use the same letter for one type of trait and just show that there's different variations and alleles of that. So you're going to use T for both of them. If a homozygous short plant is crossed with a heterozygous plant, what are the possible phenotype and genotype possibilities? So here's the first thing I need to know. Homozygous short. Well, I know that short is recessive to tall. So that means the first genotype is little t, little t. And it says it's crossed with a heterozygous plant, which means it must be big T, little t. And just so we know that this plant would be tall because it has the dominant allele, which will cover up the recessive allele here. What are the possible phenotype and genotype possibilities? In order to do that, to figure out the probability of what the offspring will be, I draw my Punnett square and I place two alleles from one parent on top and two alleles from the other parent on the side. It doesn't matter to me which you put where. Then I fill in my Punnett square, so I bring the big T over to the right one square, the big T over to the right two squares, the little t over to the right one square, the little t over to the right two squares, and the little t down, the little t all the way down, the little t down here, and the little t all the way down to the bottom as well. And now I have filled in my Punnett square. So I'm just going to look at my Punnett square and talk about what I see right now. I notice this is a heterozygous genotype. This is a heterozygous genotype because they have big T, little t. And these are both homozygous recessive genotypes. So just when I'm thinking about this, because tall is dominant to short, this would represent, this genotype would give a tall plant, this genotype would also give a tall plant, and these two, this genotype would give a short plant in the offspring. So let's summarize my results. Let's first talk about my genotype probabilities. Well, I could have a heterozygous genotype, which represents a probability of 2 out of 4, or 2 divided by 4 times 100 would give you a 50% probability of having a heterozygous offspring from this parental cross. Or I could have a little t, homozygous recessive offspring. It's also 2 out of 4 options times 100 would give me 50%. Now remember, this is the likelihood, if you will, that an offspring would be heterozygous or homozygous recessive. These do not represent that they have 4 children, and every time they would have a new offspring, you would have to redo this test cross. This represents the probability of that option being present in the offspring. Now let's take that and look at the phenotype probabilities. Well, we said 2 out of 4 of them represented tall plants, so 2 divided by 4 times 100 would be 50%, and 2 out of 4 of them would show a phenotype of being short, so 2 out of 4 divided times 100 would also give 50%. That means there's a 50-50 chance that the offspring from this parental cross would be tall, or a 50% chance that the offspring from this cross would be short. Again, remember this is telling you the probability of getting a specific outcome, not telling you for certain that this is the first offspring, this is the second offspring, third offspring, fourth offspring. No, 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 no. This is what you have to do every time they have an offspring in order to predict the outcome of the cross.